My lords, yesterday the River Restaurant downstairs helped us to celebrate Burns Night all day. I thoroughly enjoyed the Scotch broth at lunchtime, but I resisted the main course as I was eating out in the evening. I even resisted the whiskey bread and butter pudding. The main course which I resisted was vegetarian haggis, celebrating Burns in a way that respected the consciences of those who didn't want to eat meat. A very proper and good thing to do. No legal requirement to provide vegetarian haggis, but welcome to many, and I think I would have enjoyed it. Clearly Lord Cormac did enjoy it. Yesterday wasn't just Burns Night, it was also for church people the festival of the conversion of St. Paul. And in St. Paul's teaching, he is very strong in asserting that Christians, although they're free to make many decisions morally, must always respect the conscience of those who are weaker, those who have a tender conscience. That's an absolute requirement in the Christian faith, that those whose consciences are more tender or weak than our own must be respected, are not forced to go against those consciences. We have the same teaching in other areas of religion as well. In the Old Testament, it's very clear that the vulnerable and the weak are to be supported and helped. In the teaching of Jesus, he criticizes those leaders who lay burdens too heavy for people to bear upon ordinary folk. And as we've seen the history of the world since the time of Christ, and particularly our own country, we've seen, I believe, through a great deal of influence from the Judeo-Christian tradition, the development of free societies, of what we now tend to call liberal democracies. And in those societies, there's always been a great deal of attention paid to the rights of conscience, even though they go beyond and they're more tender and sensitive than the views of many other people. Every free society respects the rights of conscience to a great extent, and we've heard some of that already in this debate. The societies which restrict the rights of conscience tend to be those which are tyrannical. The extreme left or the extreme right of politics is where we find conscience being restricted. In free societies, a great deal of tolerance is given to those who have conscientious objections to all sorts of things. Now, this isn't just a matter of religion. Conscience is a very, very deep part of what it means to be human. It's not just religious rights we're talking about, it's very deep human rights, that people shouldn't be forced to go against what they believe to be right or wrong. In this particular bill, which I support strongly and look forward to seeing further debated and possibly amended, it recognises some changes since the Abortion Act. Most abortions now have far more involvement from nurses and pharmacists than they did in the early days. Methods of doing abortions have changed. I believe it's right to extend the conscience clause, for example, to pharmacists, since their involvement is greater than it used to be. We need as a society to find ways to modify the law as it was set out in 67, not just to affirm the conscience clause there. I believe this is a matter of public concern, it's a matter of public policy, it's a matter for public debate. If the 67 Act needs to be clarified, that should be done not just in the courts, but in Parliament, on behalf of the people of the country. If the 67 Act is proving in some way unsatisfactory, in that some people's consciences are not being allowed, then we need to do something to modify it, not to reduce the possibility of abortion, not to reduce people's freedom to seek medical treatment, which I want to underscore, but to allow those who have a tender conscience to exercise that conscience. My Lords, I support this bill.